If you ever work the graveyard shift, do yourself a favor and never look too closely at the security monitors around 3 a.m. There are things your brain isn't meant to process when it's that deprived of sleep. I learned that the hard way, and I don't think I'll ever sleep with the lights off again. I work security at a data center about 20 miles outside of Phoenix. It's basically a giant, air-conditioned warehouse full of blinking lights and humming servers. My job is mostly staring at screens and drinking bad coffee. Usually, it's just me and the shift supervisor, Tyler, on site between midnight and 6. It's quiet. Too quiet sometimes. You start hearing things over the constant hum of the cooling fans. Last Thursday, around 2:45 a.m., Tyler went downstairs to do his rounds in the server aisles. I was up in the main command center, watching the wall of monitors. We have cameras everywhere, inside and out. I was scanning the perimeter feeds when movement caught my eye on monitor 4. That camera covers the second floor breakroom. It's a depressing little windowless room with 2 round tables, vinyl chairs, and an old vending machine that always steals your quarters. I noticed someone sitting at one of the tables. Their back was to the camera. I honestly thought it was Tyler at first, maybe taking a quick break he didn't mention. But the posture was all wrong. Whoever it was sat hunched over, perfectly rigid, staring straight ahead at the reflective glass of the vending machine. I grabbed the desk radio. "Hey Tyler, you okay up in the break room?" All I got back was static for a second, then Tyler's voice, sounding slightly out of breath. "Mark, I'm down in server aisle C near the loading dock. Why?" My stomach dropped like a stone. If Tyler was downstairs, he was on monitor 4. I looked back at the screen. The figure was still there. I realized they were wearing a dark gray hoodie with the hood pulled up. We don't have uniforms, but Tyler was wearing a bright blue polo shirt that night. This wasn't him. "Tyler, stay put," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We have an intruder on the second floor, break room. I'm going to check it out. Call the cops if I don't radio back in 3 minutes." I grabbed my heavy maglite flashlight, the kind that doubles as a baton, and headed out of the command center. The hallway leading to the break room felt longer than usual. The air in the building is always cold to keep the servers safe, but this felt different. It was a freezing, damp cold that sunk right into my bones. I got to the break room door. It has a small, wired glass window at eye level. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them. I stopped outside the door and listened. Nothing but the hum of the vending machine compressor. Slowly, I leaned in and peeked through the little window. The break room was empty. The tables were clear. The chairs were pushed in. The vending machine lights buzzed flickeringly. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It must have been a glitch in the camera feed. It happens. Old systems get weird shadows sometimes. I felt foolish but relieved. I opened the door and stepped inside just to be 100% sure. It smelled like stale coffee and ozone. I did a quick sweep of the small room. No one was under the tables. No one was hiding behind the vending machine. I pulled out my personal cell phone. We have a secure app that lets us view the camera feeds remotely when we're walking the floor. I wanted to make sure the glitch was gone so I could radio Tyler and tell him it was a false alarm. I opened the app and tapped on the breakroom feed. I nearly dropped my phone. On the tiny screen in the palm of my hand, the man in the gray hoodie was still there. He was sitting at the table right in front of me. The exact same empty table I was staring at with my own eyes. I froze. I couldn't move. My brain couldn't reconcile what my eyes were seeing versus what the camera was seeing. Then on the phone screen, the man slowly began to move. He didn't turn around. He just tilted his head back, agonizingly slowly, until he was looking straight up at the ceiling corner, right where the physical security camera was mounted. He raised one pale hand from the table and pointed a finger directly at the lens, directly at me, watching him on my phone. And then he smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, stretching the skin of his face until it looked like it might tear. I didn't scream. I just turned and ran. I ran back to the command center, locked the heavy door, and jammed a chair under the handle. Tyler was banging on it 5 minutes later, terrified because I wasn't answering the radio. When we looked at the main monitor wall together, the break room on the screen was empty again. I quit the next morning. I didn't give notice. They still haven't found a replacement, and honestly, I don't blame them. I still have the security app on my phone. They haven't revoked my access yet. I try not to look at it. But last night, around 3 a.m., I couldn't help myself. I checked the break room feed. The room was empty, but on the glass front of the vending machine, there was a fresh, greasy smudge. It looked exactly like the print of a human hand, right where that thing had been staring at its own reflection. There is nothing worse than the sound of your phone ringing at 3 in the morning. It's not a normal ring. At that hour, it sounds like an alarm bell for a disaster. Your heart jumps straight into your throat before you even open your eyes, because you know deep down that nobody calls at that time with good news. It's always an emergency, a drunken mistake, or something much worse. Last month, I was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment near the edge of town with my roommate, Mark. We worked different shifts at a local warehouse, so we usually just passed each other in the hallway. That weekend, Mark had driven up north to his parents' cabin for a fishing trip. He was supposed to be completely off the grid, miles away from the nearest cell tower. I was looking forward to having the place to myself for a few days. The first night was fine. I watched a movie, ordered a pizza, and passed out around midnight. Then it happened. At exactly 3:03 a.m., my phone lit up the dark room, vibrating violently against my nightstand. I groaned, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and squinted at the screen. It was Mark. I was confused. He had made a huge deal about how he wouldn't have any service up there. I almost ignored it, thinking it was a butt dial, but a nagging worry made me slide the bar to answer. "Mark, you okay?" I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. There was nothing on the other end. No static, no background noise of the woods or a cabin. Just absolute dead silence. It felt heavy, like someone was holding their breath right against the microphone. "Hello, Mark, stop messing around," I said, getting annoyed. I held the phone tighter to my ear. Then I heard it. It was very faint but distinct. It sounded like wet footsteps squelching on carpet. Then a sharp click and the call ended. I sat up in bed, wide awake now. The sound had given me chills. It wasn't the sound of someone walking in the woods. It sounded exactly like the cheap, water-stained carpet in our apartment hallway. I got up, grabbed a baseball bat from my closet, and did a full sweep of the apartment. The front door was dead bolted. The windows were locked. Nothing was out of place. I tried calling Mark back, but it went straight to voicemail. I figured he must have driven into town for supplies and got a brief signal. I tried to rationalize the weird noises as signal interference. The next day, Saturday, I sent Mark a text asking what was up with the late call. It never delivered. That night, I had trouble falling asleep. I kept checking my phone, waiting for it to ring. I finally drifted off around 2:00 a.m. An hour later, I was jolted awake again. The time was exactly 3:00 a.m. It was Mark again. This time I answered instantly. "Mark, seriously, what is going on? You're freaking me out." Again, silence. But this time the background noise was louder. It was a rhythmic scraping sound, like metal being dragged slowly across concrete. It was accompanied by a low, guttural sound that I realized with horror was someone weeping. It didn't sound like Mark. It sounded like someone in terrible pain trying to be quiet. "Who is this?" I whispered, my stomach knotting up. A voice finally spoke. It was raspy and deep, definitely not Mark's voice. It said 5 words that made my blood run cold. "He looked so peaceful sleeping." I threw the phone across the bed like it was covered in spiders. I leaped up and turned on every light in my room. I was hyperventilating. Who the hell was that? And where was Mark? I dialed 911. I told the dispatcher I was getting threatening calls from my roommate's phone and that I thought he was in danger. They sent an officer over to take a report, but there wasn't much they could do since Mark was technically an adult on vacation. They said they'd try to ping his phone, but if it was off, it wouldn't work. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, clutching the baseball bat. Sunday morning passed in a blur of anxiety. I called Mark's parents to see if they had heard from him. His dad sounded confused. He told me Mark never showed up at the cabin Friday night. They assumed he had changed his plans and stayed in town with me. Panic set in. I was about to call the police back when my phone rang again. It was the middle of the day, 1:00 p.m. It was Mark's number. I answered on speakerphone, my hands shaking. This time it was Mark's voice, but it sounded wrong, flat, monotonous, like a recording being played back. "Hey buddy, sorry about the bad connection. The cabin is great, catching lots of fish. See you tonight." The call ended. I stared at the phone in disbelief. That hadn't sounded like a conversation. It sounded like he was reading a script at gunpoint, and his parents just said he wasn't there. I called the police again, frantic this time. I told them everything, the parents, the weird calls, the robotic voice. They took it seriously now and put out a missing persons alert for Mark in his car. That night I couldn't stay in the apartment. I booked a cheap motel across town. I just needed to be somewhere else. I set my phone on the motel nightstand, dreading the coming hours. I watched the digital clock tick closer to the witching hour. 2:58, 2:59. At 3:00 a.m. exactly, my phone lit up. Mark's name flashed on the screen. I didn't want to answer, but I had to know. I picked up. "Listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The police are looking for you. They're tracing this call right now." A laugh came through the speaker. It was dry and wheezing, the same raspy voice from the second night. "No, they aren't, Tyler," the voice sneered, "because Mark doesn't have his phone anymore." "What did you do to him?" I yelled. "I didn't do anything, I just found it. He left it behind. But you know what's funny?" The voice paused, and I heard the distinct sound of a motel room door handle being jiggled. My motel room door handle. "You shouldn't have left your apartment, Tyler. You were safer there." The line went dead. I didn't even pack. I grabbed my keys and wallet and ran out of that room faster than I've ever run in my life. I drove straight to the police station and sat in the lobby until morning. The next day, they found Mark's car. It was submerged in a lake about 20 miles off his route to the cabin. He was inside. The coroner said he had been in the water since Friday night. But here is the part that I can never get out of my head, the part that keeps me awake every single night. The police found Mark's cell phone in the console of his car. It was completely waterlogged, ruined beyond repair. They said it had stopped working the moment it hit the water on Friday. There is absolutely no way any calls could have come from that device. I moved out of state a week later. I changed my number. I tried to move on. But sometimes when I'm staying in a hotel for work or when I'm up late alone, I find myself staring at the clock as it ticks toward 3:00 a.m., praying that my phone stays dark. Because the police never figured out who was calling me, and whoever it was, they knew exactly where I was when I tried to run. You know that feeling when you try a door handle, expecting it to turn, and it just stops dead? That split second of confusion before your brain registers that it's locked. Now imagine that feeling, but you're inside your own house, and you know for a fact you didn't lock it. 2 months ago, I needed a break. My job in the city was grinding me down, so I rented a cheap cabin up in northern Vermont for a long weekend. It was isolated, about 5 miles down a dirt road from the nearest gas station, but that was the point. I wanted silence. woods. I arrived on a Friday afternoon. The place was decent, a little dusty, but cozy enough. I spent the first night just watching movies on my laptop and enjoying the fact that I couldn't hear sirens or neighbors screaming. Saturday is when things got weird. I woke up feeling groggy, like I'd slept too hard. I spent the day hiking nearby, and when I got back around dusk, the vibe had shifted. The woods felt quiet, not peaceful quiet, but predatory quiet, like everything was holding its breath. Around 9:00 p.m., I decided to grab some firewood from the stack on the porch. I went to the front door, turned the deadbolt from the inside, and pushed. Nothing. I pushed harder, putting my shoulder into it. The door didn't budge an inch. It wasn't stuck due to humidity. It felt solid, like there was a concrete wall on the other side. A cold spike of adrenaline hit my stomach. I thought maybe the old lock had jammed. I ran to the back door, the only other exit, located in the small kitchen. I unlocked it and yanked the handle. It wouldn't move. Panic started to bubble up. I'm not a claustrophobic person, but the sudden realization that I was trapped in this wooden box in the middle of nowhere made my chest tight. I ran to the living room window and cupped my hands against the glass, trying to see out into the pitch blackness. The cabin had these heavy wooden shutters. They were wide open when I arrived. Now they were closed. Someone had closed them from the outside and latched them shut. I went to every window in the cabin. All of them were sealed tight. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I grabbed my phone. No service. Of course. The landline in the kitchen was dead too. The cord had been neatly sliced where it went into the wall jack. This wasn't a prank. Someone was out there. I grabbed a heavy cast iron skillet from the kitchen, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I stood in the middle of the living room, listening. The silence was deafening. Then I heard it. Scrape. It was slow and deliberate, something metal being dragged along the exterior wood siding of the cabin. It started near the back door and slowly moved along the wall toward the front. It sounded heavy, like a crowbar or an axe head. I stopped breathing. The sound circled the entire cabin. It took agonizing minutes. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to get in. They were making sure I couldn't get out. The scraping stopped right outside the front door. I stared at the heavy timber door, gripping the skillet until my knuckles turned white. A shadow moved across the small gap beneath the door. "Hey," I yelled, my voice cracking. "I have a gun, get out of here." It was a bluff and a bad one. There was no response, just silence. Then a soft metallic click-clack. It sounded exactly like a heavy-duty padlock snapping shut. I rushed to the peephole in the door. It was dark, but I could just make out the shape of a heavy hasp and staple that had been freshly screwed into the door frame and the door itself, securing it from the outside. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the corner of the bathroom with the door locked, clutching that skillet. I didn't sleep for a second. I just listened to the wind and imagined who was out there, and why they wanted me kept inside like an animal in a cage. When the sun finally came up, I heard a truck coming down the driveway. It was the property owner coming to check the generator fuel. He had to use bolt cutters to get me out. The police found footprints all around the cabin. They said it looked like someone had been watching me for at least a day before they made their move. They found something else too, near the woodpile I had tried to visit. It was a sleeping bag, rolled out and flattened, like someone had been sleeping there the night before I arrived. They never caught the guy. I don't go to isolated cabins anymore. I don't even like being alone in my apartment, because the scariest part wasn't the noise or the isolation. It was the realization that whoever was out there didn't want to hurt me. Not yet. They just wanted to make sure I was right where they wanted me to be.